And we are live and on the air. This is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. If you don't have any idea what that is about, we are the Minions, the followers of the best science podcast in the universe, This Week in Science. And we have our own little hangout. Today, we're going to talk about science. Today, it's just me and my friend Jani from Finland. A few other minions may pop in, hopefully. Bunch of science news to talk about. A new kind of a battery, called a flow battery. And the idea is recycling the CO2 emissions from power plants and using that to charge, to create energy. Recycling always a good idea. Another story about making tires out of biomass, wood and grass instead of fossil fuels. Also a great idea. Compounds some researchers have created, which they think can hopefully untangle the tau protein mass that seems to be causing mental illnesses such as Alzheimer's and ALS. Another story about people who have an amazing memory, almost total recall, and maybe that's not such a good thing. I don't know. How wind power in the United States, the capacity of wind power has for the first time exceeded hydroelectric power capacity. And another kind of generator using bacteria. A little bit of a political story about using DNA, being able to create a profile and look at the DNA of people who may be related to criminals, and the police claiming that this can help them to track down criminals. Lots of question marks about that. Another neat little story about how learning sign language. Now, learning sign language can help you with your peripheral vision and your reflexes, perhaps. Another story about how algorithms, everything is about algorithms. The world is being run by algorithms right now. Cute little story about Robo Bees, little robot bees. Maybe sort of kind of someday helping out to replace all the bees who are seemingly dying off. And we got to improve our medical reporting system. Well, I'm going to jump into the first story. It's about this new kind of a battery being developed called the flow battery. And let me work the old screen share. Okay, there's a picture of that little new battery. And I will read from the story. And we got a bunch of researchers developed a new type of rechargeable battery called the flow cell that can be recharged with a water-based solution containing a dissolved carbon dioxide emitted from fossil fuel power plants. And that would be great, being able to recycle pollution. The device works by taking advantage of the CO2 concentration difference between CO2 emissions and ambient air, and they think can lead to generating electricity. The new flow cell produces an average power density of 0.082 WM2. What would that be? That would be kind of watts per millimeter or something like that. Chemistry is not my strong point. It's almost 200 times higher than values obtained using previous similar methods. Other people have tried to use this, but this particular researcher seems to come up with a much better solution. Very early results. And the researcher's name is Taeyoung Kim, Bruce Logan, and Christopher Gorsick at Penn State University. And they say the work offers an alternative, simpler means of capturing energy from CO2 emissions compared to existing technologies that require expensive catalyst materials and very high temperatures to convert CO2 into useful fuels. The large difference in CO2 concentrations between the two gases is also what provides an untapped energy source for generating electricity. In order to harness the potential energy in this concentration difference, the researchers first dissolved CO2 gas and ambient air in separate containers in a process called sparging. At the end of this process, the CO2 sparged solution forms bicarbonate ions, which give it a lower pH compared to the air sparged solution. In one case, 7.7 compared to 9.4. And after sparging, the researchers injected each solution to one or two channels in a flow cell, creating a pH gradient in the cell. Now, the flow cell has electrolytes on opposite sides of the two channels, along with a semi-porous membrane between the two channels that prevents instant mixing while still allowing ions to pass through the two. Due to the pH difference between the two solutions, various ions pass through the membrane, creating a voltage difference, causing electrons to flow along a wire connected to the electrodes. After the flow solution is discharged, it can be recharged again by switching the solution channels, and you get this current going back and forth. By switching the solution that flows over each electrode, the charging mechanism is reversed, and once again it goes back and forth. Tests showed that the cell maintains performance of over 650 cycles of alternating solutions. That's not a lot of cycles. The results also showed that the higher the pH difference between the CO2 and ambient air channels, the higher the average power density. Although the lower power pH gradient flow achieves a power density that is high compared to similar cells that create waste to electricity. All right, but it's still much lower than the power density of CO2 that combines CO2 with other fuels such as H2. The new fuel cell has certain advantages over these other devices, such as the use of an inexpensive material. You're talking about CO2 from emissions from power plants and things like that, and ordinary room temperature air. Feature also makes flow cells attractive for practical applications at existing power plants. System containing numerous identical flow cells would be installed at power plants that combust fossil fuels. The flue gas emitted from fossil fuel combinations would be needed to be pre-cooled and bubble through a reserve of water that could be pumped through the fuel cells. Currently looking to see how the solution conditions can be optimized. So it's an idea. It's got to be perfected, but it's pretty neat. It recycles carbon emissions. CO2, the pollution, and it takes them and recycles them by creating this battery operation using ordinary ambient air. So the cost is low. The production at this point isn't anywhere near high enough to be useful, so it does have to be upscaled. But it's a start, and hopefully it will result in something that can recycling again, recycling sustainability. Hopefully it will work out. I'm going to take a look at, got any messages? No, I got Ulysses. Our friend Ulysses is on the road, so I don't think he's going to be joining us. Actually, that first story I put in for him because he's an actual master electrician and could have explained it a heck of a lot better than I did. All right, moving on to the next story. I'm talking about using biomass to create tires, using biomass from trees and grass and building tires from it. Okay, let me do the old screen share thing again. There we go. And that's the little contraptions they're using to create an ingredient that can be used to produce tires. And this is the University of Minnesota. Invented a new technology to produce automobile tires from trees and grasses in a process that could shift tire production industry towards using renewable resources found in our backyards. That's what we want, renewable resources. Conventional car tires are viewed as environmentally unfriendly because they are predominantly made from fossil fuels. The car tires produced from biomass that includes trees and grasses would be identical to existing car tires with the same chemical makeup, color, shape, and performance. Technology has been patented by the University of Minnesota. Our team has created a new chemical process to make isoprion, the key molecule in car tires, with natural products like trees, grasses, or corn. And this is Paul Duhauer from the University of Minnesota. Currently, isoprion is produced by thermally breaking apart molecules in petroleum that are similar to gasoline in a process called cracking. So you're heating up these molecules. The isoprion is then separated out of hundreds of products and purified. In the final step, the isoprion is reacted with itself. Not sure what reacted means, mixing of some sort, into long chains to make a solid polymer that is the major component in car tires. Now, this research was funded by the National Science Foundation, research for the Center for Sustainable Polymers, and they focused on the new process that begins with sugars derived from biomass, including grasses and tires and corn. They found that a three-step process is optimized when it's hybridized, meaning it combines biological fermentation using microbes with conventional catalytic refining that is similar to petroleum refining technology. First step in the process is microbial fermentation of sugars, such as glucose derived from biomass, to an intermediate called itonic acid. In the second step, itonic acid is reacted with hydrogen to a chemical called methyl THF. This step is optimized when the research team identified a unique metal-to-metal combination that served as a highly efficient catalyst. This process technologically breakthrough came in 3 steps. The improvement came in the 3rd step, to hydrate methyl THF into isoprene using a catalyst recently discovered by the University of Minnesota called PSIP. The team was able to demonstrate a catalytic efficiency as high as 90%, with most of the catalytic product being isoprene. So the process produces isoprene. By combining all 3 steps into the process, this isoprene can be renewably sourced from biomass. The performance of the new bio-containing Zyolid catalyst called SPPIP was surprising. This new class of solid acid catalyst exhibits dramatically improved catalytic efficiency and is the reason the renewable isoprene is possible. Economically biosourced isoprene has the potential to expand domestic production of car tires by using renewable, readily available resources instead of fossil fuels. This discovery could also have an impact on many other technologically advanced rubber-based products. Oh, that would be a great step. If we can replace fossil fuel produced tires with tires created using grasses and trees, biomass, which is a lot cheaper, I think, and doesn't pollute, then you've got something that's very useful. So 5 stars to these guys. Hopefully they can upscale it. All right, on to the next story. This is a compound that the researchers believe can untangle tau proteins. What happens is tau proteins clumping in the brain are what seems to create a lot of the problems for diseases like Alzheimer's and ALS. And I will do the screen share again. Okay. There you go. Now, this is a study with mice and monkeys. The National Institute of Health funded researchers showed they could prevent and reverse some of the brain injury caused by the toxic form of a protein called tau. The results, published in Science Translational Medicine, suggest that a study of compounds called tau anti-science oligonucleotides that are generally engineered to block a cell's assembly line production of tau might be pursued as an effective treatment for various types of disorders. Cells throughout the body normally manufacture tau proteins. In several disorders, toxic forms of tau clumping together inside dying brain cells and form neofibrillary tangles, including Alzheimer's. So you get this clumping of tau proteins. Not a good thing. Currently, there are no effective treatments for combating toxic tau. This compound may literally help untangle the brain damage caused by tau. And the researcher's name is Timothy Miller of Washington University. Now, antisense oligonucleotides are short sequences of DNA or RNA programmed to return genes, turn them on or turn them off. The researchers tested sequences designed to turn tau genes off in mice that are genetically engineered to produce abnormally high levels of a mutant form of the human protein. Tau clusters begin to appear in the brains of 6-month-old mice and accumulate with age. The mice protein, the mice develop neurological problems and die earlier than control mice. Injections of this compound into the fluid-filled spaces of the mice brains prevented tau clumping in 6 to 9-month-old mice and appeared to reverse clustering in older mice. The compound also caused older mice to live longer and have healthier brains than mice that received a placebo. In addition, the compound prevented old mice from losing their ability to build nests. Currently, researchers are conducting early phase clinical trials on the safety and effectiveness of anti-science oligonucleotides to treat disorders including Huntington's disease and ALS. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration recently approved use of an antisense oligonucleotide for the treatment of spinal muscular atrophy disease with children. Further experiments on 9 human primates suggest that this antisense oligonucleotides tested in mice could reach important areas of larger brains and turn off tau. In comparison with placebo, 2 spinal tap injections of the compound appeared to reduce tau protein levels in the brains and spinal cords of monkeys. The researchers saw with the mice, injections of the compound also caused no side effects. So you're preventing protein, you're preventing tau clumping, and hopefully this will lead to a treatment for Alzheimer's and some ALS and similar kinds of treatment. Okay, I got to apologize. I was hoping that Ulysses was going to be here so he could give me a little more feedback on chemistry. Chemistry really isn't my strong suit. So hopefully you're getting some sense out of this. All right. Total recall. Now, excuse me. I will do the screen share. And this is something that was only recently discovered in the I don't know exactly. Let me read the story. Okay. If you asked Jill Price to remember any day of her life, she came with an answer in a heartbeat. What she was doing on August 29th, 1980, she can tell you it was a Friday. I went to Palm Springs with friends and their family on a Labor Day weekend. Before we went to Palm Springs, we bought some bikini wax. So she remembered very precisely what happened 14 years and 8 months ago. If you ask her, what about the third time she drove a car? She can tell you the third time I drove a car was on January 10th, 1981 on a Saturday. So, she can remember practically dates of anything that happened in her life. And this can go back to when she was just 18 months old. She was the first person ever diagnosed with what is now known as highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM. a condition she shares with around 60 other known people. She can remember most of the days of her life as clearly as the rest of us remember the recent past, and with a mixture of broad strokes and sharp details. She's 51 years old, and she remembers the day of the week for every date since 1980. She remembers what she was doing, what she was wearing, and a lot of the exact details. She can actively recall a memory 20 years ago as easily as her memory 2 days ago. In order to figure out how this works, researchers first needed to understand what it was and was not. The subjects the researchers worked with turned out to be far better than most people with average memories at recalling long past autobiographical data. They were correct about 87% of the time. So it's not perfect recall, but it's a highly active recall. Most of the SHAM subjects described mental systems that would seemingly improve retrieval, sorting memories chronologically and categorically. This data-based structure seemed to help them organize their memories as though they were tagging them for easy reference. Significantly, researchers showed that people with average memories are bad at temporarily placing memorable events. We don't have a sense of whether the thing happened 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. All of the subjects reported that they enjoyed replaying their memories in their minds, challenging them to remember specifically what happened 20, 30 years ago. And that's the part I'm kind of curious about, because there are a lot of memories I don't want to remember. They noted most of the subjects exhibited obsessive behaviors. Rick Barron used to keep every banknote in in alphabetical order by the name of the city of the Reserve Bank. Wow. He has a storage space jammed with neatly organized collection of personal artifacts that she couldn't get rid of. Beanie Babies, toys, dolls, a whole bunch of stuff. Songs that she recorded off the radio. Another guy by the name of Bob Peralta used to clean his groceries with antibacterial wipe when he got home from the grocery store. This was a nice positive correlation. All of these people having various degrees of OCD. There were also neurophysical differences between the subjects and people with average memories. Examination of their brains showed that the subjects exhibited structural differences in areas of the brain associated with autobiographical memory creation, increasing in the hippocampus gyrus, for example, an increase in Euchantin I don't know. Screw it. You know what I mean. The bridge between the frontal and temporal cortex that transmits information and is involved in episodic memory retention. But none of these findings fully explains what enables people with high recall to remember so much. Whether their mental organizational systems help these subjects to retain memories, or whether they needed to develop elaborate systems, something that they were born with, or something they developed over time, or something they kind of reinforced over time. Plenty of people rehearse their memories and don't have this total recall. And plenty of people with OCD don't have the incredible memory recall of the subjects. A researcher by the name of Lawrence Pahidis of the University of Minnesota Mississippi, excuse me, worked with 20 subjects and 38 people with standard memories. The total recall subjects were equally likely as the control group to claim words that had not appeared on the list had in fact appeared. And they showed a higher overall propensity to form false memories. So once again, this is not perfect. They were equally likely to mistakenly report that they had seen non-existent footage of a plane crash or what happened on 9/11. The findings suggest that no one, not even someone with this total recall, is immune to reconstructive mechanism that it enables memory distortions. So it's a very specific kind of memory type of recall. It begins, it appears, very early in life, around 18 months in this one woman's case, but it's also something they develop over time. And it's kind of, I guess, the OCD that so many of them display also probably reinforces this ability. And I guess my question would be, there's a lot of things that happened in my life that I don't want to recall. So I really would not want total recall. I like the idea of being able, having I guess, selective memory. Jani. Hello, Jani, if you're there. I got a question. Would you like to have total recall? Would you like to recall everything that happened in your life? Or would you be able to forget about some things?
Well, what if you could just get those memories back? Like in the blind spot. If you have I've seen that series.
Yeah, if you could be selective, if you could have some kind of control. Well, actually, these people have control, in that they, you ask them a question, and they go back in time. Now, if you find out that what's the mechanism behind it, what's chemically happening in the brain that'll gives these people that ability, and then you could give ordinary people that same kind of ability. Well, you're creating a lot more people with a lot better memories. I guess in certain kinds of work, that would be very useful. You could scan data a lot more quickly. I guess, well, if you worked in law enforcement, I don't know about a superpower so much. It could have uses, but personally, I wouldn't want to have it. I have false memories. I think stuff has happened, and it never really happened. I think back in, I think of, for instance, going back to 1969 when I was at Woodstock, but I've also seen the movie Woodstock, and there are events that happened in the movie that I think happened when I was actually there, but they didn't happen when I was there. So I definitely have false memories. I'm okay with that, because there's a lot of memories of what happened back in NYC, New York City, some bad nights at New York City. I'm very happy not to be able to remember. So, total recall, I don't see necessarily as being a good thing. Okay. Let me move on to our next story. And I'll tell you, this is wind power. And every single week, I think for the last several months, we've had a story talking about increasing use of wind power. All right. What the heck is happening here? Come on. I don't know what happened to the story. So I am going to zap off it, end the screen share. Don't know what happened to the link. Okay, I will read from the story, however, and what we're talking about is comparing wind power capacity to hydroelectric capacity. And for the first time in 2015, wind power capacity exceeded hydroelectric capacity. And the nation's first fleet of dams have long stood as the top renewable energy resource. But there has been little market interest in building more hydroelectric dams. In the meantime, we're seeing increasingly states are building wind turbines and creating more and more wind power. The amount of wind power generation has actually increased since 2008. Now, according to the Energy Information Administration, conventional hydroelectric generation stood at about 79,000 megawatts. This is in 2015, where wind power reached 82,000 megawatts, about enough to run 24 million average American homes. So that's a pretty good amount of production. It's probably a lot more economical now to build a wind farm than to build a hydroelectric dam to generate electrical power. So that's why you're not seeing any more hydroelectric power. According to that same people, the most recent annual electric power report, hydroelectricity edged out wind power in terms of actual generation, but both trailed fossil fuels and nuclear power by a wide degree. Now, the difference is that hydroelectric power runs basically 24/7, whereas with wind turbines, the capacity is there, but they're not always generating power. They have peak periods and off-peak periods. Or with dams and things, you're pretty much getting that power 24/7. So while the capacity is there, you can't get that power from wind turbines 24/7 like you can get from dams. And that's the same thing with solar energy. That's what's holding back solar energy. The panels right now, they're only about, for solar energy, they're only about 30% effective. Turbines are beginning to get to 40% effective. But when you're talking about fossil fuels, you're talking about, like 90% effective. So what's slowing down progress is having batteries so that you can store the energy during peak periods and then use it during off-peak periods. If you're talking about solar power, that means storing the energy during the day when the sun is out so you can use it at night. Whereas with fossil fuels, you run those suckers 24/7. So you don't have that problem of peak and off-peak. Let's see. Among generators that do not primarily rely on fossil fuels, nuclear plants are the most efficient. Now, they run at 92% of their capacity in 2015. Hydroelectric's only 36%. Wind, the kind of wind that we have, the wind farms that we have right now are at 32%, and solar energy is even lower. Although, as I say, they're building wind turbines that are now can be 41%, and they're building, they're doing research on building solar power at about 30%, but way lower than nuclear power and way lower than fossil fuel generating power plants. Technology advances in wind designs, including taller turbines with longer blades that can harvest energy and leading to increased efficiency. And they say they're projecting to be built wind turbines that are 41% effective. The main fuel driving the robust spread of fossil fuels is a combination of federal tax incentives with state mandates requiring utilities to build more renewable energies. So at this point, it's incentives that are leading to the creation of these wind turbines and things like that. The federal tax incentive, the production tax credit was worth 2.3 cents a kilowatt hour of electricity generated to the grid by projects that begin construction in 2015 and 2016. So it's this tax credit that is making them more feasible. But that tax credit is scheduled to be phased out by 2019. Now, the problem, of course, is the government we got right now, I don't know that they're going to be going along with this tax credit when it gets phased out. And our current president might be around for 4 years, and Republicans are probably going to be in power for at least 2018, and they've only got 8 senators up for re-election. So there's a reasonable chance that when this tax credit runs out in 2019, the legislation for it, it's not going to be renewed. Not until we get changed in administration. Although the newest administration appears far less focused on making carbon emissions a priority, what the wind power executives hope is that they can show the administration that it's going to create a lot of jobs. And that's going to be the key, because the administration is more interested in job creation. So, and I think solar energy, wind farms are going to produce way more jobs than our current fossil fuel. You can create a lot more jobs building these wind turbines and putting them up, I think, than you can in building memory not going here. I need some of those anti-tau clumping. Okay, the pipes. So I think in the long run, there's a lot more jobs being created, but we're going to have to convince the current administration, and that might be a hard sell at this point. Okay, let's see. Ain't nobody joining us. Okay. Going on to the next story. And this is talking about generating electricity from bacteria. Okay, let's see if the screen share works here. All right. And there's some test tubes and stuff that shows you how they're doing it. Now, in the wild, you got electric organic bacteria generating current as part of their metabolism. And researchers have found a way to confer that ability to non-electric organic bacteria. Technique could have applications for sustainable electricity generation and wastewater treatment. And this is research from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Now, the concept here is that if we just close the lid of a wastewater treatment tank and then give the bacteria an electrode, they produce electricity while cleaning the water. And the amount of electricity they produce will never power anything big, but at least it can offset the cost of cleaning water. And if you can take this process, you've now got a process for creating bacteria that can produce electricity, and maybe other people can come along and upscale this. And I think it's got a lot of potential. The bacteria that inspired this study, called Shigella odonensis MR1, live in an oxygen-free environment, and they breathe they breathe metal materials and electrodes instead of air. Wow. Via a current conducting proteins in their cell membranes. So most bacteria species, however, do not have such proteins and therefore don't produce any current. Wow, you've got, I know you've got the electric eels and things. Well, now you got electric bacteria. The team hypothesized that with the right kind of biocompatible molecular additive, those electrogenesis might be conferred to bacteria that have not evolved to do so. The researchers built a molecule called DFSO+, which contains an iron atom at its core. To add the DFSO+ to the bacteria, the researchers dissolved a small amount of the rust-colored powder into water and added that solution to bacteria. With a few minutes, that synthetic molecule found its way into bacterial cell membranes and began conducting current through its iron core, providing a new pathway for the bacteria to shuttle electrons from inside to the outside of the cell. Okay, because the molecule's shape mirrors the structure of cell membranes, it can quickly slip into the membranes and remain there for weeks. This chemical approach to changing bacteria's capability will most likely be cheaper than biologically engineered bacteria. So instead of using bioengineering, you're going to use this chemical reengineering. They're completely different strategy. Before we were building the devices, we were limited to optimizing them by changing reactor materials and architectures, or using genetically engineered techniques. The researchers call this DFSO+ molecule a protein prosthesis because it is a non-protein chemical that does the protein's job. It's sort of analogous to a prosthetic limb. Understanding how the electrogenetic bacteria consume organic fuels and use their metabolic processes to generate electrical currents can lead to more efficient biological electricity generating technology. It is useful to have a well-defined, well-understood molecule that can be integrated. We know how it's interfaced with bacteria, so it will give us a very precise electronic chemical control over the bacteria. So there you go. Using electro-organic bacteria, using that process to create electricity, to create bacteria that is also creating electricity. They can add something to the process and actually make these bacteria glow in the dark. You can do all kinds of neat things. So, I mean, now you've got you've got bacteria creating electricity. And boy, that would be way more efficient and obviously less polluting than currently burning fossil fuels and things like that. So this, this another piece of research that I really hope can be upscaled. Okay. The next story, we're talking about a tool that the police and people like the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI want to use. It's DNA profiling. And what it amounts to is they want to be able to get a DNA sample from the relatives of a criminal, and they're saying that this DNA sample can help them locate the criminal. That's the claim. They really don't. I'll read what some of the people in law enforcement think, but I'm not convinced. I think this is really potentially a very dangerous thing, and it's the kind of thing that's happening. Most people don't realize it. Most people probably don't even care. They want to say, I'd rather be safe than I don't care about my privacy. I just want to be safe. And that's a very dangerous attitude. All right. The question of how widely investigators should be able to examine DNA. Let me screen share. That's a little bit better than looking at my bald head, I think. Okay. Well, all right. Now, that's a picture there. The police are claiming this is a woman who was killed, and it was very difficult. They couldn't figure out how to solve the crime. And now what they claim is that this DNA profiling helped them, when in fact there's no real evidence that it did. Okay. It's called famliy searching. The technique attracted support after the murder of this poor unfortunate woman, Katrina Vetrone of Queens. It's a case that that stymied investigators for months, and a recent break in the case that led to the arrest of the subject did not involve famliy researching, but there was a push by the police who say it could have that potential. So they want they want more authorization to use this kind of profiling. And they're saying that this could have helped out in this case when it did not. Really stupid. In any event, the method has raised ethical questions. Now, it says famliy searching allows investigators to look through databases with wider parameters to identify people who are most likely close relatives of the person who may have committed a crime. If the relative is found, they say the investigators can work backward to find the subject. Let's see. Many see it as an invasion of privacy. I think they're spot on. And on Friday, the National Commission of Forensic Science, which is weighing whether to authorize the method in New York, they had a public hearing. And here's remarks from a couple of people who went to the hearing. So this is a lawyer for the New York City Defender Services. And this is his opinion. The criminal justice system has created a massive racial disparity in the way poor New Yorkers of color are policed and prosecuted. So logically, their presentation in the DNA database would be equally dramatic. Thus, the community largely falling under investigation from famliy searching would be these communities of color already disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system to begin with. Okay, now we got a couple of people who think this could be a good idea. And one of them is Eric Rosenblum, who's from the Queens District Attorney's Office. Now, what he says is it can reliably generate leads that enable law enforcement to identify the guilty. But the technique can also, importantly, help ensure that the innocent will help ensure that the innocent will not be wrongly charged, let alone subjected to prosecution, conviction, and sentence. Why we've been asked in the past days, are we still pressing for famliy DNA researching if an arrest has been made in the murder of this woman, which, the thing is, there's no proof that famliy DNA matching did in fact help solve this particular case. Okay, got another guy, Emmanuel Katarensky, who is the forensic investigator for the New York Police Department. Now, what he says is in 2004, the United States Justice Department published a report that concluded that almost half of all prison inmates surveyed reported having a close relative who had also been in prison. Usually it was stabbing, primarily a brother. Data such as this supports the belief in and boosters the efficacy of famliy searching to produce valuable leads. To date, when used successfully to identify a perpetrator, and actually there's no evidence that it has, the courts did not rule to suppress evidence in that particular situation. Okay, so there's kind of the two sides, and there's really no evidence whatsoever that this DNA database search has helped solve any crime whatsoever. I really think it's a bad idea. I would be completely, it's one thing, well, it's hard for me to see where it could be useful. I can see if you're talking about you want to get the DNA profile of someone with a history of crime, perhaps. Maybe you do something like that for a person who's been released from prison, maybe. So you've got a population of people who have already committed crimes. Maybe you do that. But to use that kind of a database search and include people who have never committed a crime, that just does not make any sense to me. And it's going to waste time, I think, and it's really going to increase the possibility of someone who did not commit a crime, and maybe this DNA evidence that closely matches their DNA was found at a crime scene, and the investigators may say, okay, it's close to a match to your DNA, and they use that and they try to prosecute you, and that's just not going to work out as far as I can tell. But the law enforcement wants it, that they can scare people enough, and I can definitely see we've got an administration that's wanting to scare people, and you scare people enough, and they're just going to go along with it. So I think it's a very dangerous precedent. Okay. Moving on. Got a neat little story here.
Even some American citizens have been needed to open the phone, unlocked phone in the border. So he's violating the more law than others.
Yeah. That's what I say. He's law enforcement wants as much data as they can about anything. They want to be able to get into anybody's phone. That's what they want. Now, what stops them at this point is a warrant. In this case, when it comes to famliy searching, I'm not even sure there's any kind of a legal precedent that prevents them from doing it. Not really sure. But we've got an administration creating an atmosphere of fear. And you got a lot of people, they just say, I want to be safe. They're going to go along with, give the police all these powers. And we've seen what happens when, somebody has all that power. They're going to abuse that power. And it's a really bad precedent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fear is not enough. It's not the solution.
Oh, definitely. I think, the only reason, that you've got the administration we have now in the United States is because I think a lot of people have read the news and they think there's a lot of crime when there really isn't that much crime overall. And, they're buying into this idea that immigrants are going to create a lot of crime, and it's false information, but they believe it because they want to believe it. And we've got an administration.
Government fool that, hey, not giving the right information.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'd like to believe that there were a large percentage of people who didn't vote, if they had voted, wouldn't have voted for the current president. I'd like to believe that. I don't know if that's true. Actually, what happened was more people voted for the other person anyway. But we got this stupid electoral college, so our current president got in. I don't know. Hopefully, well, I don't know how much damage he can do in 4 years. And, hopefully, whatever damage he does in 4 years can be reversed if we get a new president in who's, it's hard to imagine getting a worse president. Hard to imagine anybody less stupid than the president we got now. So anybody basically might be an improvement. But man, I really hope that the Democrats can get their act together. I don't know if they can do it in 2018.
Not Democrats, but Republicans also.
Well, I don't know. I don't see much pushback from Republicans at this point. That's what I want to see. I do want to see
They are not serving the people right now.
They're serving their people who voted for them. The people who voted for the current administration do, in fact, want a wall built to keep Mexicans out. That's what they want. So the administration is giving the people who voted for them what they want, I think.
Well, because if you give the wrong information, they give the vote.
If you got a half a brain, you're not going to believe this stuff. I mean, we all have a bias. We all believe what we want to believe. But at least some of us, are not going to believe the headline. The headline's always going to be bad. The world is falling apart. Climate change, It's not happening. Oh no, there's no climate change, or it's not being caused by people. So the only people who believe that are mostly older generation people. They're mostly people who haven't developed a skeptical mind. And those are the people that elected our president. And there weren't enough of voters who are skeptical, who don't simply believe what they see. And I don't want to say younger, less educated, or older, less educated versus the younger, but I don't know. I'm beginning to babble anyway. We're in a tough 4 years here. Tough 4 years.
But
hopefully it's not going to create too many problems for you guys in Europe.
When people believe those fabricate news is more than real news, that's the problem.
Yeah. The safety guard is our courts. Now, you go into court, you can't BS the courts. You can't say stuff that's not true. First of all, there's going to be a lawyer on the other side who's going to take your part. Same thing, when any of these people go before Congress, they can't really lie. They can make claims, but it's really hard when they're in front of other congressmen to lie. But once they walk away and then they talk to the public, they've got their constituency. They can say anything they want, and the people who voted for them will believe it. So it's not really a problem I don't see with the leaders telling lies. It's a problem with voters believing it. I don't know. Somewhat depressing to believe there were so many voters who basically, put their brains on a pause and believe anything they were told. I don't know.
In the UK, there was that some people didn't know what they was voting for Brexit.
They wanted someone. They believed that we live in a very unsafe world. They believed that it's because of all these immigrants. They believed that all these immigrants are voting illegally. They believe you got a whole bunch of terrorists are coming into the United States, and we got to stop all the. There's over 4 million. I don't know the exact number, Muslims, and you got these people who believe all these. Too many of these Muslims are becoming terrorists, and a whole bunch of BS. And they believe it, and they just go into the voting booth and they vote because of that bias. I don't know. Hard for me. I never thought the guy would get elected, so I can't really.
Well, guy who get elected perhaps can't read it. So, person who is starting the country can't read. What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just upsetting. We have the worst president of my lifetime, and probably the worst president. My only hope is that he's so stupid, he'll do something stupid and get impeached. That's my only hope. And that could happen.
Well, he is in that line already.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to try to gain financial advantage out of being the president. He's got advisors who are going to try to use their situation in some way, shape, or form to their own financial advantage. And hopefully, when that happens,
and now Trump could get that bad thing as companies. No, we don't sell your products.
Yeah, there is some companies that
and adding more to that.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
We use immigrants, so this ban don't help us. So we don't support you.
Yeah, well, I want to move on to something else. But
Not so many new companies coming with this president.
I don't know.
He's not helping them at all. He's making it first.
Well, Wall Street investors love this new administration because he's lowering taxes, and in particular, lowering the business tax. So businesses love him.
Rich people tax, where he is. So not the poor people.
Oh, definitely.
Poor people who's wanted to get a job but don't get, and they then rate one, and they what?
Yeah, he's lowering tax income. Now, if you're going to lower tax income, you have to spend less money. You can keep borrowing money, and that we know that's bad. Okay, so he's got to decrease spending. What he's going to do, and what the Republicans will try to do, they're going to cut spending on things like programs that might predominantly help the poor. Maybe they'll cut federal spending on education, etc. And so they've got
an increased military.
Well, increasing the budget of things like Homeland Security. As far as the military goes, it depends upon what he does as far as using the military. If he starts a war, like starts a war with China, which would really be stupid, but if he did that, then he's got to really dramatically increase the military budget. The military now getting pretty much everything they want anyway. So I don't know how he can increase the military budget. I can see how he can increase the he wants to build a wall. It's impossible to build a wall across the Mexican-United States border. He wants to do it. Okay, he can start construction on it. There are certainly states who say, let's build a wall in my state, so he can spend, I don't know how many $1 billion to start constructing the wall. Yes, he can do that. And that means increasing spending, so he's got to cut someplace else. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to see how this budget works out. It could really have a negative. It could have a short-term positive effect if more businesses takes the tax dollars they're gaining, the business tax lowering, they got more money, and they use that to hire more people.
Well,
it could be a good thing.
Using less taxes, people spend less, so they get less money.
I don't know if that'll happen. As far as the income tax on people, just lowering the income tax on the rich people, what she's going to do, everybody who makes over $250,000 a year, the only effect that will have is people who make more than $250,000 a year will have more money to spend. There's not a lot of them. That whole trickle-down idea doesn't really work for the population as a whole. But it's the business tax that's the key. Lowering the business tax. Is that going to mean businesses hire more people? It could. It could.
Well,
is that going to mean...
Trump isn't paying taxes, so...
Oh, it'd help him personally.
Something for cutting that customer thing is not beneficial for them to do.
What can help him personally? Help his friends personally.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
Well, but it hurts those poor people.
Oh, yeah. Well, the support system for poor people is undoubtedly going to be reduced.
So he's killing Americans with his decisions to helping those his friends.
Yeah. He's certainly not helping people, helping the poor. Okay. A couple of more stories to get through. One of them dealing with how algorithms are used to make a lot of decisions just about for everything when people do searches and things. Let me just do a screen share. Simply say you don't have to keep looking at me. There we go. Scary, scary algorithms. And the story says, when you browse online for a new pair of shoes, pick a movie, apply for a car loan, an algorithm is what is going to lead you to a particular outcome. All right. The complex mathematical formulas are playing a growing role in all walks of life, from detecting skin cancers to suggesting new Facebook friends, deciding who gets a job, how police resources are deployed, who gets what about insurance costs, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they're also being used more to write news articles from raw data. But while such automated tools can inject a measure of objectivity into subjective decisions, fears are rising over the lack of transparency algorithms entail, with pressure growing to apply standards of ethics and accountability. Kathy O'Neill, a data scientist, says algorithms are not inherently fair because the person who builds the model defines success. She argues that while some algorithms may be helpful, others are not. And she wrote a book called Weapons of Math Destruction. For example, here's some examples. Public schools in Washington, D.C. in 2010 fired more than 200 teachers, including several well-respected instructors, based on scores and the algorithmic formula which evaluated performance. You had this little algorithm. The algorithm said you got these two teachers that are not doing their job, when you had to look at, okay, what's the criteria that the algorithm used? Garbage in, garbage out. Particularly, I mean, if you got a teacher, now it says well respected. I don't know what that means. But if you got I would trust a person making that kind of evaluation more than I would, at this point, an algorithm. It's hard to say because people can be biased too. But I don't think algorithms at this point have an adequate degree of accuracy to be used for those kinds of decisions, who you hire, who you fire. Okay. A man diagnosed with bipolar disorder was rejected for employment at 7 major retailers after a third-party personality test, deemed him a high risk based on its algorithmic classification. A personality test? What you got to look at is, can the person do or not do the job? Relying on some algorithmic formula, I don't know. That does not sound particularly useful. Okay. Many jurisdictions are using predictive policing to shift resources to likely hotspots that, depending on how the data is fed into the system, lead to discovery of many minor crimes and a feedback loop which stigmatizes poor communities. Yeah, this whole, I don't know, can it accurately predict high crime areas? You don't need some stupid algorithm to do that. You know what, you got people on patrol. Policemen on patrol can do that much better. Okay.
Actually, police uses those algorithms. You have to catch the bad guys. Even in New York, they are added that machine learning and algorithms for that kind of thing.
Okay, I'm not an expert, but I have read in more than one place that what you see on television, the use of computer technology in television, not how it works in the real world. I'm sure
It's the need to show, but there is idea behind it, but still.
Well, it depends on what you're using it for, like all technology. It depends on what, if you're, for instance, we talked about previously, if you have this famliy DNA search thing, you got a computer, it's looking at a whole bunch of databases, and it spews out a whole bunch of names of people whose DNA may match this particular subject. You're gonna bring a lot of people into that net that are innocent people, and the risk is, if you're just relying on that data set, a supercomputer looking at that data set for something like hiring and firing teachers, for something like, should you hire an individual for a job? You do that. You ask a person on the job interview. Now, I can see screening, some kind of a screening process. The key being, you've got to come up with the most accurate set of data. You've got to say, this is the data that's important. So the key is the person who's building that algorithm. I mean, you look at the targeted advertising. They're not that accurate. That's okay with targeted advertising.
But it's also the parameters like behavior where that teacher has been earlier, and also what he wants, and all kind of things need to be considered.
Yeah, if you're using an algorithm to target ads to people who are most likely to buy it, that's okay, because your accuracy level doesn't need to be that high. I don't know, 75%, whatever. But if you're using it in the criminal justice system, 75%, the accuracy level that works for targeting ads, that's nowhere near as high as what you want for law enforcement. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of very good algorithms that have been developed that do help the police, for instance, like financial records and things. So I'm sure there is algorithms that are helping the police with, computer searches. But I think their use may, and I have to use the word maybe, there may be overused. That's really what I want to say. They may be being overused, becoming relied on more and more, and situations where you want 99% accuracy as opposed to 75% accuracy. So I think I would agree with the gist of the article.
All depends in the case where it's used. So
Yeah, it starts at the algorithm. So you'd want to make sure, well, you want to make sure your algorithm is going to be precise enough. So what can happen is, if you want to create a pool of suspects, and you've got a large pool of suspects, you run a computer search on different things, and you want to cut down the size of your pool of suspects. Okay. Now,
you need the data from the site and also
yes.
like the weather and all, so to speak, one key and more dataset, but still one point of the whole thing.
Oh yeah, it's got to be accurate. And a clear example would be if you're going to use an algorithm to decide where you should put your police resources. The concern is that the algorithm is probably going to say it hasn't worked, and we already know that the algorithms don't work when it comes to things like deciding on sentences for criminals. You have judges. Someone's been convicted of a crime. The question is, what's the odds of them going to commit another crime? And that dictates the size of the sentence. Now, we already know that doesn't work accurately. And you wind up with people from a poor background, African Americans, who wind up getting longer sentences than they should because the judge used an algorithm that wasn't accurate.
Well, sentence is one, but if you have audio from that and also the faces, it could be like you know what is happening around that guy who is talking about. And what
facial recognition.
All these faces and emotions tell the story about.
Yeah, the facial recognition software, it's getting better. It helps, but it's not something, I don't think, that is reliable enough to be used in a court. I don't know. Well, I don't know. First of all, I don't know.
Well, it's just one.
I mean, you've got the cameras everywhere. It could help
if you have more things to data in the pool. You should be start to recognize things.
It can help you. It can help you.
Like we have known what is in the space and our universe more better when we have more evidence and that data from it.
Yeah, it comes down to how precise is the algorithm in making predictions. And for some things, it doesn't have to be that precise. For others, it needs to be more precise. If you're talking, I mean, you can't, if you start with the idea, okay, you're looking for terrorists, and you start by saying someone who is a Muslim or Muslim looking is more likely to be a terrorist than someone who's white, let's say. Well, you look at terrorist acts in the United States, and you've got your white supremacist groups committing acts of terror. So when you look at the statistics, when you actually look at the evidence, it might, you can't, it's false to say that looking at Muslims is going to identify you're terrorist. It's not useful. You're looking at 4, 5, 6, 10 million people. It's useless, absolutely useless. So it's not, like I say, it's not that isn't precise enough. So you can't say Muslim-looking people. You got to be more precise. Now, if you can say you've got someone, and this someone is connected to a terrorist organization already. So you start with the people you know who are terrorists. Okay. And you plug them into the system. And then you plug in people who maybe have helped them or maybe not helped them. And you put them into the system. Now and then you look for them using that facial recognition software, etc. Now you've got a small enough group of people it begins to make sense. But if you simply start with a larger pool, like, all Muslims from 7 countries, your pool is going to be, you're going to have millions of people in that pool. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources, in my opinion. I don't believe these algorithms are nearly accurate enough for that kind of a situation.
And actually, what happened? It was actually wrong. Actually, that ban actually made those American lives in those countries worse. A life-threatening situations.
Mm-hmm.
If you say you're American, you are basically dead if that ban is alive. So,
well, I mean, that's a good example.
it's just this behavior. When some isn't, when some data point, it's just past effect from the now on in the time. All those behaviors, the change.
Mm-hmm. A good example of inaccurate information being used. Okay, you got this fly list. You're banning Muslims from certain countries only. Okay, you're banning Muslims primarily from places like Iran. Okay, so you're going to ban Muslims from Iran. You're not banning Muslims from Saudi Arabia. Well, guess what? You look at the Islamic State and Al Qaeda. Guess where their resources are coming from? Saudi Arabia. You look at all those people that committed 9/11, they're from Saudi Arabia.
And actually, what I was reading the news, something about the Muslim was saying that in some area about in the Moscow there is those radicals writing to, hey, come to join this our movement. But in Saudi Arabia, no, aren't or something, but they're trying. And the signal what is coming from United States is telling us, hey, they gave more power about that, luring the people in. Even they are good Muslims and so on.
Yeah. So that's an example. The problem is it's just too big of a list. And you have the example of that young boy who needed an operation, couldn't come into the country. He was coming into the country, but he was stopped because of the fly list because he's from the wrong country. Plenty of examples of it's just not working, and it's not going to work because, again, you're starting from a false premise. And that's the problem with things like having someone in law enforcement, let's say, building. They're saying, okay, this is what you got to look for. They have too many have a bias. So if you go to Missouri, where you had Ferguson, Missouri, where, I mean, you just look at the statistics and things. It's fairly biased. There's a lot of police. There's more police probably in Missouri that are biased than in many other states. Now, if they're the ones that are building the algorithm is going to be biased in itself, and it's just going to target, African Americans. That's like it used. You had the business for years, and on the highways, looking for stolen cars. What do? Well, it's a black person driving an expensive car. Well, that's got to pull him over. Stupid. And it was a fact that for years, and hopefully it has changed. I know it's changed in some places, maybe not others, that you don't pull over a black person just because they're driving a car and you think maybe that it's stolen. Plenty of white people steal cars. So that's an example where you got to start with something very, very precise. And
think about that the precise thing in that in some those sanctuary cities in America, those was it Latinos or Muslims or so on, they tell those officers, hey, these guys was the bad one from our community. The speech in itself is helping. The information, hey, these are the bad thing from our group and so on. And also the refugees, they're coming, and if the group knows where the bad guys are, because they have been spent the time of them.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's
actually that thing helped in Finland to get those two ISIS terrorists by held and go to jail because of, hey, we had evidence, and then the guys pointed that person, hey, there's those guys poisoned in the bad guys in our nation.
Well, even I know even in some of the Scandinavian countries where you get the racial profiling from foreigners, and you look at someone, let's say where they live, and if they live in a low rent project where you have a high crime rate, then that individual immediately gets targeted simply because of, they live in a tenement building in a poor area where there's more likely to be crime, and they are going to be more likely to be targeted by the police, even though they have absolutely, nothing to do with crime. That happens everywhere.
Yeah, but still, you need to know what is reason behind it.
Yeah.
Perhaps there is data for getting the reason what is causing those and tackle those problems itself.
Everything starts with building a more precise algorithm. And as I say, it's fine if you're talking about targeting ads, but it's not so fine if you're talking about how long somebody's going to stay in jail.
But sometimes it's easy to attack something, but still, if you accuse wrong person, it's not helping.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I got a fun little story here. You might robot bees. You ever heard of robot bees, Johnny? Now, I know people at MIT are building what they call little robot bees. This is a guy from Japan. Now, okay, I'll read from the story. I will screen share with you. Here's a friendly. Got a picture. No picture of the old robots. Okay, I'll give you a picture of a bee to look at. Okay. All right. Mini drones supporting mini drones. Yeah, supporting sprouting. Excuse me. They got horsehair. Coated in a sticky gel, could one day take the pressure off of beleaguered bee populations by transporting pollen from plant to plant. Really? In any event, roughly 3/4 of the world's flowering plants and about 30% of the world's food crops depend on animals to pollinate them. Some of nature's most prolific pollinators are our friends, the bees. But bees populations are declining around the world, and last month, for the first time, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service listed a native species of bee as endangered. Now you got a guy from Japan. Okay. He said that they've taken the first step towards creating robots that could pick up the slack from insect pollinators. The scientist created a sticky gel that lets a $100 matchbox-sized drone pick up pollen from one flower, deposit it onto another flower. This is proof of concept. The key innovation of the new study, is in this iconic liquid gel. The gel was actually the result of a failed attempt to create electronic conducting liquids, and they put it away into a desk drawer. And it sat there for 8 years. And even after years, it had not dried out. It was still very sticky. So this researcher comes along and says, aha, you got this gel. It's going to stay sticky for 8 years. You know what? Maybe I can use it for something. Maybe I can use it and put it on a robot bee. The gel has just the right stickiness, meaning it can pick up pollen, but it is not so adhesive that it won't let the grains go. Now, the scientists have tested how effectively the gel could be used to transport pollen among the flowers. They did so. They put droplets of material on the back of okay. So they had ants. They put a droplet of the sticky substance on some ants, but not on others. They put them in a little box, and then the next day you check the box, and son of a gun, the ants with the sticky substance on them had picked up more pollen grains than the ones that didn't have a sticky substance. What? You know what? Peanut butter. You could use anything. Honey would have accomplished the same thing. Stupid experiment. In any event, in another experiment, the researchers found it was possible to integrate phototronic compounds, which change color when exposed to UV or white light, into the gel. Scientists stuck this material into living flies. Lo and behold, what do you got? You got fireflies. Okay, wonderful. All right. And they think it'll help with some kind of camouflage. Really? Okay. In any event. But while improving the ability of other insects to pollinate flowers, it's a potential solution to falling bee numbers. It's very difficult using living organisms for practical realizations. So he tried to change his approach, and he used robots. The hairs that male insects like bees, the fuzzy hair on the bees are important to use in their role as pollinators because it's the bees that grab onto the pollen and hold it. The scientist added a patch of horsehair to the robot's underbelly, which was then coated with this gel. They flew it out to collect pollens from the flowers of Japanese lilies to get the flowers, moving it around from one flower to the next. All right. Researchers, they had 100 attempts at to pollinate the flower, and their success rate was 37%. That's not so good. I'm going to guess that a bee can probably move that pollen from one place to the next where it's supposed to go, probably, a heck of a lot more than 37% of the time. And if they didn't put that little sticky gel on the hair on the robot, it didn't collect any pollen. Of course it didn't. Another stupid experiment. What do I know? Researchers probably gave this guy buckets of money to do this. In any event, current limitations to the technology. Yeah, there sort of kind of is. But it shows a potential. And that I do agree with. There could be some potential use for this. Couple of drawbacks. Couple of minor drawbacks to using robot drones. Now, I have no doubt that you could build a drone, and this Japanese guy did. It can go out to a flower and at least 37% of the time pick up the pollen from one flower and put it onto another. Okay, that's one drone. Now, if you look at the number of bees that are used to pollinate, let's say even a small field of plants, there's an average of around 40,000 bees in a hive. And even to pollinate even a small crop, you need, I know beekeepers, they use maybe, I'll say five or 10 beehives. So if they use 5 beehives, that's 200,000 bees. You got to build 200,000 of these little robots. I don't know. And that's just a small field. And if you want to replace a big field, I mean, you're talking about, hundreds of, talking about 1 billion bees.
Can be done.
Feed them? Well, you need energy.
Well, we can build them.
Oh, building them, yeah. I mean, it sounds like an enormous waste of time to build a kind of a robot because it has to mimic a bee. That is, one, it has to have vision, a sense of vision, probably a sense of smell. Now you could probably.
I guess smell is one, but still there is those sensor that could mimic perhaps better the bee, like, but it is small enough. That would be tricky.
Oh yeah, scale, making it smaller. Absolutely is is the point I was getting to. It's got to have a sense of vision and smell. It's got to be able to land on a flower. Now, it's got to be able to land on the flower that a bee does. Can't just land on the flower and knock the flower over. So it's got to have some kind of control mechanism that's precise enough so it can land on the flower and on the part of the flower where the pollen is. So it's got to have some reasonable, good navigation system. And then it's got to be able to know that it's picked up pollen. Can't just fly it, here's the pollen, and fly away because maybe it didn't pick up pollen. So it's also got to be able to know that it actually did pick up pollen. And then it's got to be able to fly over to another plant and go through the same process. So it's complicated. So you got this teeny tiny little bee-sized robot, not tiny enough to fit in a flower. All that, that kind of a mechanism and something that's small, you maybe could do it, but then do that with, 1 billion teeny tiny little robots? Well, I don't know.
If you can make one, you can make billions of them. You have the factory line then.
Oh, you could do it. You got yourself a couple of $1 billion. You could do it, but is it worth it? Let's see. I mean,
well, bird is needing peace, so, and that people population is going to die or something. So we need something to keep this planet alive.
well, the first thing is you address what's killing the bees. And before
Well,
I
we
would,
can help them with robot bees, so when we are discovering what is killing them.
right. And before I build a robot bee, I genetically engineer bees. I would take an ordinary bee and genetically engineer it. That would seem
Clone
to
them.
me, yeah, clone them. That seemed to me. I mean, you got to spend money on the process, but once you got the process, you're growing. I mean, you've got your own artificial hive or whatever. The bees are developing, and that's got to be a heck of a lot cheaper genetically engineering bees than trying to build a billion little teeny tiny robots. Oh, I don't know.
Well, we could look what is happening with those queen bees, as the population need those.
One of the problems with bees is their resistance to mites. And there are diseases that cause mites to grow on bees. I don't know what the exact connection is, but there's a mite that does a great job of killing off bees. One of the things they found with some of the colonies that have died, this colony collapse disorder, it's because of the resistance of the bees is too low, just like us, and mites
Well,
kill it.
we need to know what is causing them. That,
Yes. They've done some research.
and as a humans, we need to know that too if we want to colonize other planets.
That's a leap ahead. Colonizing other planets.
Basically, we could end up living in the soils, into space. But that's not good at all.
Well, the thing that's going to kill us in space is radiation. So, genetically engineer people to go into space.
Life support.
Yeah. Okay. I have run through all of my stories. You like to talk about space. Do you watch the show The Expanse?
And I have watched one, and I know I'm in the first season still.
Mm-hmm.
I have watched it into Netflix.
Mm-hmm. That show, from what I have read, is a fairly accurate depiction of, for instance, how different people on different planets grow differently. You have Earth, Mars, and people in the asteroid belt, and they're physically different. So,
Well, gravity is different, and
yes.
that affects in the bones. So,
Yeah, you got to get around. We'd have to create an atmosphere. You got to do something about the radiation. That's number one. Then you've got to build an environment. You've got to do with terraforming.
well, we know how we to terraform things already.
Some things, yes.
Well, we have killing this planet, so that is easy for that how we terraform. Just
Yeah.
pull there those coal plants, what Trump is trying to do.
Yeah, but do you have to bring your resources, fertilizers from Earth, so that you're ferrying fertilizers back and forth? You've got, I mean, if the planet doesn't have things like fertilizer, and Mars is a dead planet, then what you're getting, you've got to ferry all the material in. You can do it over time. We're talking about thousands of years. It will happen.
Well, we can send those proper machines there and try to build something with those.
In 1,000 years, yes. We can get robots, but the robots aren't going to be able to do any terraforming at this point. That will happen.
And
I'll say
if
1,000 years
they
in the future.
have the building plants, those power plants there on or like coal plants and so on.
Mm-hmm. You have
The atmosphere to breathe, so
mm-hmm. Yeah, start in the moon.
you start to create that reaction in the first place.
Yeah, well, we are many, many years away. What you're talking about will happen. Kind of recent. Again, I know that there are. Well, you had Mars one, I think, set up an experiment in a desert or something and tried to create what be Mars-like conditions. I forget all the details. There are some NASA's doing some experiments with in desert areas to try to recreate the conditions that we'll find on Mars. So it's really early days. Some of that type of thing is being developed, and what you said is exactly what needs to happen.
Well, there is also that plan what Matt Damon did on the Martian movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right.
Potatoes, building potatoes in Mars soil.
Well, you got to put the Martian soil's got no fertilizer. It's dead
Well,
stuff. You can't
he
grow
was
anything from
going
it.
to talk about that with Trump.
We had to get the fertilizer there. I don't know if human way. I don't forget where he got the fertilizer for the soil. Maybe it was his own human waste, possibly. But,
Need some border. Some key aspect.
yeah, interesting to see how they will do it. That will be a case where they will start with computer simulations to see how to do it. And then when they can get a computer simulation that works, then they will try to replicate that out in the field. Right now, the Chinese seem to be moving ahead of us in that, planning an actual putting people on the moon, for instance, spending more money on their space program than we are.
Well, they have more unified plan on all alone.
No, this government supports it more.
For years.
Yeah.
Before.
Mm-hmm.
They just continue that
Mm-hmm.
road. So.
Oh, excuse me. We don't have Finland type snow, but we have enough snow that I've had to get up early and clean off my car. So getting up early means me not getting in sleep. And me not getting asleep means.
Well, you could have some. You have to plug in the car, and if the farmer decides so, it should firm car and engine.
I don't have a garage.
Well, it's not have to be garage. If you're outside of the plug-in place.
Talking about an electronic car, or are you talking about plug-in to heat up the?
Well, for heater, so it's not to be electric car.
I know that in cold places like Alaska,
I heard
Michigan,
Dave has some in Colorado.
mhm,
In
that's
Dave's car.
for heating up the battery. So when you go into the car will start quickly. What you're heating is the battery. You're not clearing snow.
Well, yeah, but still you got help the inside the car too. If you're firing in the inside, and also the heater in the inside is also plugged.
You're running an awful lot of gas. If you're running a car on idle to
Well,
bring up the
not
heat, you're
gas.
running a lot of gas. That's not good for a car. You don't want to start the engine and let it run for a long period of time.
Yeah.
That's not a good idea. Now you
Well, if
can,
you, I mean, if you have a heater, plug it in, and also that's firing from that point, what forms the battery also comes to inside the car, indoor.
putting in a space heater inside the car.
Yeah.
I don't know about putting a space heater inside the car. That might work. It's
You
gonna.
could, well, easy thing is to add blankets. So when before the night you can last cover the glass windows. In the morning you just take it
I had
off.
a foot of snow on my car. You know how wrong you'd have to run a space heater to melt off a foot of snow from a car? And it
Well, you
wouldn't do
have
anything as far as the outside or to get into the car. I got to have
well
something.
you can cover that from something about blanket or something. Those windows.
Hmm. I don't know. I can certainly, I know they do it to run the battery to warm up the car. I know there are people that go out and run the car to clear the windows, just like you say, but they're running their car for quite a period of time, and that hurts
You
the
don't
motor
have
on the car.
well you don't have to if you do it right.
What do you mean, do it right?
Well, like I do, I take the window blanket off, covers off in the morning.
Okay. This is before.
Then yeah, just before that happening.
Okay. Yes. I know what you're talking about. Sure. That's a good idea.
You cover those windows before you go to sleep, and
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea. See, you also have the advantage in Finland. You got all those saunas. So after you get cold outside, you just go in and heat yourself up in the sauna. Never got any messages.
Ulysses have a pink shirt.
He put his finger up, but I don't see him. I mean, I got the link. How many minutes ago? 6:42. That was 20 minutes ago. So I mean, if he was going to join us, he would have done it already.
I think he are in the road, so it would be just a hotel,
Yeah,
bad Wi-Fi and such.
right. Yeah. Okay. I am talked out. Thanks for showing up, Yanni. The minion. You're the dedicated minion. You're here every week, like. And you buy, you've got your channel. I see all the unboxing you've been doing. You're buying a whole bunch of stuff there, Jani.
Well, you get those, then you don't need to buy shirts for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You just get them.
Yeah,
And then you can give something for the kid.
mm-hmm.
Somebody who likes something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you don't like them.
Oh, there's a whole, well, as you know, Star Wars fans spend buckets of money collecting stuff about Star Wars and God knows what else. What's the movie? Iron Sky, is that the movie that's made either in Finland or by Finns?
By Finns, but it's also now it's more with the third one is cooperation with Chinese people.
Okay. Chinese?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, Finnish people and Chinese people have something in common, so it's easier that way.
Have something in common.
Yeah. Something mythical.
What do you have in common with the Chinese?
Something was removed from one mythology, but we have, but still.
Okay.
There are similarities in both, so.
Oh, I see. Filming, too.
Not just filming, but still.
Mm-hmm.
Before, long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a long time. Oh, yes. Okay. I know what you're talking about. Well,
I think when it was Vikings and so on, so.
right, the Vikings.
Or before that, even before that. A very long time ago.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the Vikings. I would have thought, I know that they're originally from the steppes of Russia. There was a race of people migrated down Turkey, maybe Iraq, I don't know, and then immigrated up. And
Vikings was
Celtics, I think.
Well, Celtics was one thing, but still there was from the Asas Hill in Same. What they call themselves. Yeah, in the Lapland in Finland side and.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah,
and
the Lapland.
Their territory.
Okay. Origins of let's see. All right, let's see what my friend Wikipedia says. Thousands of years, Eurasian descendants. So, okay, just like you said, you're the Mongol Asiatic components of the original Finns. Okay. So that it's 50-50. The Mongols mixing with the Europeans. Okay. Interesting. All right. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna end the old broadcast.
It's 2 a.m. here, so also.
That's early. That's a little early.
Well,
What's your
2 hours past the midnight.
um? Are you? Which season are you? You're in winter, so
Yeah,
do you get darkness most of the day?
it's coming down already.
Okay,
It's not just long as a day.
so you're getting very long nights in effect and very short days, but it's changing gradually.
Well, in the northern side, there was time where there wasn't no light or at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's in Canada, there's also the sections
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah, we don't get anything extreme like we're in the more northern parts of Scandinavia. Alaska, maybe. Alaska's far enough north, maybe.
Yeah, and it has dark winters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough thing to adjust to, where you have half the year, you have got very, very long nights where it's always dark most of the time and maybe all of the time, and then change over to sunlight over most of the time. Um, the Shetland Islands, I was reading about a mystery series. That's the situation. So
Humans adapt.
okay, I'm gonna stop the broadcast.
Think about those in what what was that place in the was it Greenland or Southern Pole?
What place? if, I, if you know
I
what
mean
place, you tell me.
those science things place where people go and they can't leave the place or those helicopters land to that place.
Holland?
It's not it's too windy to land and also for was it 41 days without food or anything
Oh,
delivered to you and
that's the story of Jesus.
minus 41.
41.
Yeah, plus windy and snow and cold winds and that was strong winds also.
You spent 41 days.
Well, if you go to what that voice Antarctica,
Africa. Oh, Antarctica.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yes. That's on the two edges of the planet. Well, yes.
those research stations there,
Yes.
those people are nuts. Those are crazy.
I
Like,
wouldn't do it. That's about as isolated as you get. So
yeah,
I
you
wouldn't do
can't
it.
go outside.
You're totally
Or
reliant
just
on people.
you need to take the rope so you can get back.
Right. Everything's got to be shipped in. Um, I have read that when you've been in the station for a long period of time, uh, you're not exposed to germs as much. And then when somebody comes in with a supply plane, all of a sudden everybody at the station catches a cold because the guy coming in is spreading his germs around or their germs around.
All those bacteria.
Yeah. All right.
Oh my god. I was shared the link.
Yeah. 30 countries. First base in 1930. Yeah, Finland has was Arctic, the Finland Arctic Research Program. Which has nothing on it in Wikipedia. Queen Maud Land. Queen Maud Land. That's almost 1 million square miles. Huh. Norwegian. No, that's not for me, that's for sure.
Oh my god. Climate in there sounds wow. 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 What it sound like? Minus 90 Celsius.
90 Celsius?
Yeah.
It would be not, once you get past 40,
Below zero.
it's the same. It would 90 degrees below zero.
40 is the same.
Yeah, once you get past 40, you're talking about the same numbers, Celsius and Fahrenheit.
Not that. It's just a meeting point.
Medium point, okay.
40 minus 40 is the meeting point for two.
Mm-hmm.
But still separate again.
Let's see.
Crazy.
Oldest.
Lowest measured temperature. Wow.
It's according to Wikipedia, lowest temperature recorded Vostok Station in Antarctica. Minus 89 Celsius, so that would have been minus 120. Yeah, it's about 90, what you said.
Yeah.
That's pretty cold, all right. Somebody was there to record it. Russians, really. Would have been the Russians. I would not care to live there. Okay, I'm going to run, and I will hopefully see you next week. Hopefully, maybe Ulysses or Pamela can join us. But we shall see.
Or Patrick or Dale.
Or Dale.